The June heat was merciless, pressing down on Meadowbrook Estates like a hot iron. At 38, Elaine Mercer considered her backyard oasis, complete with an in-ground pool and carefully cultivated landscaping, to be her salvation during these sweltering months. It had taken 5 years of overtime at the medical billing office and careful budgeting to afford the pool installation, but the peaceful retreat had been worth every penny and sacrifice. Until today, Elaine was floating on her favorite inflatable lounger, the afternoon sun warming her skin through a layer of SPF 50, when the distinctive sound of her gate latch clicking open jerked her from her peaceful daze. She lifted her sunglasses, squinting against the glare to see a woman with a severe platinum blonde bob striding across the paver stones as if she owned them. Behind her trailed 3 children, all under 10, already stripping down to swimsuits. "Excuse me?" Elaine called out, paddling to the edge of the pool. "Can I help you?" The woman, dressed in white capri pants and a floral blouse that looked like it had been ironed twice, barely glanced in Elaine's direction. "We'll be using the pool for the afternoon," she announced, setting down an oversized tote bag bursting with towels and pool toys. "The kids have been simply dying for a swim, and our community pool is closed for maintenance." Elaine hoisted herself out of the water, water dripping on the concrete as she reached for her cover-up. "I'm sorry, but this is my private property. You can't just." "Oh, I'm Diane Westfield. We live on Oakman Drive." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes as she extended a manicured hand that Elaine didn't take. "Everyone calls me Dee. My husband said it would be fine." "Your husband?" Elaine repeated, bewilderment turning to irritation as one of the children cannonballed into the deep end, sending a spray of water over her carefully arranged lounge chairs. "I don't know your husband, and I certainly didn't give anyone permission to use my pool." Diane's smile tightened into something that resembled a grimace. "Officer Westfield? Detective Westfield, actually. He's with Metro PD." The name drop hung in the air between them, clearly intended to carry weight. "He knows everyone in this neighborhood." Elaine felt her chest tighten. She had exactly 2 speeding tickets in her life and had always been raised to respect authority. But this felt wrong on every level. "I've never met your husband, Mrs. Westfield, and I need to ask you to leave. This is my home." The children were now fully immersed in the pool, squealing and splashing. One had already claimed Elaine's prized lounger, which was now taking on water as the child bounced on it. "That's not going to work for us," Diane replied, unfolding a beach chair she brought along. "We'll be here until 5. I brought some cucumber sandwiches if you'd like one." She gestured to her tote bag as if offering a peace treaty. "This isn't a negotiation," Elaine said, her voice rising despite her best efforts to stay calm. "You're trespassing." Diane's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second before her plastic smile returned. "Look, James said it would be perfectly fine. He spoke to the HOA about shared amenities during the pool closure. If you have a problem, take up with him." She pulled out her phone, swiped the screen a few times, and then held it out. "Here, he'll tell you himself." Elaine stared at the phone, torn between mounting indignation and an instinctive hesitation at confronting someone in law enforcement. In the background, one of the children had found her collection of pool noodles and was whacking another with it, perilously close to Elaine's newly installed glass patio table. Somewhere in the house, her own phone began to ring. The day had started so peacefully. Now Elaine stood dripping in her own backyard, faced with an unwelcome invasion and a decision that would set in motion events she couldn't possibly foresee. Elaine grabbed the phone from Diane's outstretched hand, her patience evaporating faster than the droplets on her sun-warmed skin. The screen showed a contact simply labeled James with a call in progress. "Hello, this is Elaine Mercer, the owner of the pool your family is currently trespassing in," she stated, trying to keep her voice level despite the chaos unfolding around her. The youngest child had now discovered her collection of floating drink holders and was systematically emptying them into the water. "Ms. Mercer," came a deep, authoritative voice. "Detective James Westfield, glad my wife found your place all right. The HOA approved emergency recreational access during the community pool closure. Didn't you get the email?" Elaine's free hand clenched into a fist. "There was no email, Detective. I'm not even part of the Open HOA. This is Meadowbrook Estates. We're a different subdivision entirely." Pause. Must have been a mix-up then. His tone remained casual, unbothered. "But since they're already settled in, mind if they stay just this once? Been a hell of a week with this heat wave. Kids have been driving Diane crazy." "Yes, I do mind," Elaine replied, watching as Diane unpacked sandwiches onto her patio table without a care in the world. "This is private property, and I expect your family to leave immediately." "Look, Ms. Mercer," the detective's voice hardened slightly. "We could make this simple. I handle a lot of neighborhood issues, noise complaints, parking violations, suspicious activities. It's good to have friends in the department, know what I mean." The implication hung heavy in the humid air. Elaine felt her mouth go dry despite the pool water still dripping from her hair. Was a police officer really threatening her for not allowing strangers to use her private pool? Are you threatening me, Detective Westfield? She asked directly. Threatening? No, just discussing community relations. He chuckled, the sound mirthless. Tell you what, they'll be gone by 5, and we'll bring you a nice bottle of wine as thanks. Problem solved. Before Elaine could respond, Diane snatched the phone from her hand. We're all set, honey, she cooed into the device. Ms. Mercer understands the situation perfectly. She ended the call and smiled triumphantly at Elaine. Detective Westfield has an excellent service record, Diane said, lowering her voice. 20 years on the force. Knows every judge in the county. It would be a shame to start off on the wrong foot with him over something so trivial. Elaine stepped back, mind racing. Her neighbor Marcus was an attorney. Perhaps she should call him. Or maybe she should just document this invasion with photos and deal with it through proper channels later. The children's squeals echoed across the yard as they chased each other with their pool toys, oblivious to the tension between the adults. You have until 4:30, Elaine finally said, her voice steel. Not 5 o'clock, and you will replace anything that gets broken. She turned toward her house, dignity intact despite her dripping swimsuit and rising anger. Oh, and Diane, she added, pausing at her sliding glass door, don't expect that wine. I don't accept bribes. As Elaine stormed into her house, she grabbed her phone and began documenting everything through her window. The timestamp on the first photo read 3:17 p.m. She had 1 hour and 13 minutes to decide exactly how to handle this situation, and the Westfields had no idea who they were dealing with. Because while Elaine Mercer might look like an easy target, her sister was Councilwoman Rebecca Mercer. And if there was one thing the Mercer women were known for, it was standing their ground. Inside her home, Elaine paced the kitchen, phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. Through the sliding glass door, she could see Diane lounging in a chair she dragged from Elaine's patio set, sunglasses on, scrolling through her phone while her children turned Elaine's carefully maintained pool into what resembled a water park riot. Becca, I need your advice, Elaine said when her sister finally answered. There's a woman in my backyard who won't leave. She's a detective's wife and basically threatened me with police harassment if I don't let her family use my pool. Wait, what? Councilwoman Rebecca Mercer's voice sharpened instantly. Who is this officer? James Westfield. His wife's name is Diane. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Westfield, Rebecca finally said. I know him. Internal Affairs has a file on him thicker than Mom's Christmas cake recipe book. What exactly did he say to you? Elaine replayed the conversation verbatim, her legal secretary training kicking in with precise recall. That's textbook intimidation, Rebecca said. I'm calling Chief Martinez right now. But Ellie, I need you to do exactly as I say. For the next 20 minutes, Elaine followed her sister's instructions meticulously. She recorded a video of the backyard situation from inside the house, being careful to capture the clear absence of any invitation. She retrieved her property deed and highlighted this section defining her property lines. She printed copies of her pool installation permits and insurance policy. Most importantly, she texted her next-door neighbor, Martin Chen, asking him to come over, casually with his dog. Martin, a retired journalism professor who documented everything, would be the perfect witness. At 4:15 p.m., Elaine stepped back outside, armed with knowledge and a plan. Martin's silvery head was visible above the fence as he puttered in his garden, pretending not to notice the commotion but recording everything on the small camera clipped to his gardening hat, a habit from his investigative journalism days. Your time is almost up, Elaine announced to Diane, who had barely moved from her lounge position. We'll leave when we're ready, Diane replied without looking up from her phone. James said 5 o'clock. And I said 4:30, Elaine countered, setting down a folder on the table. But before you go, I thought you should know a few things. That got Diane's attention. She pushed her sunglasses up into her hair, eyeing the folder warily. First, I've spoken with Chief Martinez, Elaine said, the lie flowing smoothly based on what Rebecca had told her to say. He was very interested to hear about Detective Westfield's suggestion that police services might be selectively applied in our neighborhood. Diane's carefully maintained expression faltered for an instant. Second, I've documented everything that's happened here today, Elaine continued, gesturing to her phone, including damage to my property. She pointed to her now-deflated pool lounger and a scattered collection of towels and pool toys. Nothing's damaged, Diane protested, sitting up straighter. The kids are just playing. And third, Elaine said, ignoring the interruption, I've prepared a formal complaint that will be filed with the department's Professional Standards Division this evening unless you and your family leave now, replace my damaged property, and provide a written apology. Diane's face flushed red beneath her perfect makeup. You're bluffing. James has friends throughout the department. Perhaps, Elaine replied calmly, But my sister sits on the police oversight committee. Would you like to test which connection is stronger? The mention of the oversight committee visibly startled Diane. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. Children, time to go. The protests were immediate and loud, but Diane's suddenly urgent tone brooked no argument. She rushed around the pool, gathering belongings and herding children with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly how much trouble was brewing. This isn't over, Diane hissed as she passed Elaine, children dripping and complaining in tow. Actually it is, Elaine replied, unless you prefer it continue in more official capacity. As the gate slammed behind the departing invaders, Martin appeared at the fence. Got it all, he called cheerfully, patting his hat camera. Every word clear as day. Should make interesting viewing for the chief. Elaine sank into a chair, adrenaline still coursing through her system. The battle had been won, but she had a feeling the war with the Westfields was just beginning. Retro EMF. The next morning, Elaine awoke to the sound of a car door slamming outside her house. She peered through her bedroom blinds to see Detective James Westfield himself standing on her front walkway, his police cruiser parked at the curb. Unlike the image she had conjured in her mind, he wasn't the intimidating figure she'd expected. He was a man of average height with a receding hairline and the slight paunch of someone who had once been athletic, but had succumbed to too many desk lunches. But what he lacked in physical presence, he made up for in swagger as he marched up to her door and rang the bell repeatedly. Elaine threw on a robe over her pajamas and took a deep breath. With her phone recording in her pocket, she opened the door but kept the security chain engaged. Detective Westfield, she said evenly. What brings you here at 7:30 in the morning? Ms. Mercer, he said, flashing his badge unnecessarily. I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. I'd like to discuss what happened. I'm not interested in any discussion that couldn't take place at the police station, Elaine replied. Or with my attorney present. His practiced smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. This isn't official business. I'm here as a neighbor, trying to smooth things over. He held up a paper bag from an expensive local bakery. Brought breakfast, peace offering. Not interested, Elaine said. And we're not neighbors. You live in Oatman. About that, he said, leaning against her doorframe. Seems there was a misunderstanding. Diane got confused about which neighborhood pool was closed. That wasn't a neighborhood pool, it was my private property, Elaine corrected. Water under the bridge, Westfield continued as if she hadn't spoken. But I hear you've been making some calls, talking to people about me. That's not very neighborly. Is that a crime, detective? Making calls? His smile tightened. Of course not, but things get complicated when false allegations start flying around. Could be considered defamation, maybe even harassment of a police officer. Career-damaging stuff. Elaine felt cold despite the morning warmth. Are you threatening me again? Again? There you go with those false allegations. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Look, here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop whatever complaint you're thinking of filing. My wife's upset, the kids are disappointed, but we can all move on. Next weekend, you let us use the pool properly invited this time, and this all goes away. No, Elaine said simply. Westfield's facade cracked slightly. Excuse me? I said no. Now please leave before I call the non-emergency line to report harassment. You really call my own colleagues on me. He laughed. Good luck with that. From behind Elaine, a new voice joined the conversation. She wouldn't need to call them. They're already here. Elaine turned to see Rebecca standing in her hallway, dressed in her formal councilwoman attire. She must have come in through the back door using her spare key. Councilwoman Mercer, Westfield said, recognition and wariness crossing his face. Didn't realize you were related. Clearly, Rebecca replied, coming to stand beside her sister. Detective, I've just gotten off the phone with Chief Martinez. He's expecting you in his office within the hour. Westfield's confident demeanor faltered. For what? To explain why you're at my sister's house off-duty, making statements that could be construed as threats. Rebecca held up her phone, which I've been recording since I arrived 5 minutes ago. This is a misunderstanding, Westfield backbilled. I came to apologize. Then I suggest you apologize properly, leave immediately, and report to the chief, Rebecca said. Otherwise, that internal affairs file might need another chapter. The detective's face hardened into something ugly, all pretense gone. You people think you can push around a decorated officer? I've given 20 years to this community. And we appreciate your service, Rebecca replied calmly. But that doesn't put you above the rules or the law. For a tense moment, Elaine thought Westfield might escalate the situation further. Instead, he took a step back, mask slipping back into place. My apologies for the disturbance, Ms. Mercer, he said stiffly. Won't happen again. As he walked back to his cruiser, Rebecca and Elaine remained in the doorway watching. You think this is over? Elaine asked quietly. Rebecca shook her head. Not likely. Men like that don't back down easily. But now we have witnesses, recordings, and the chief's attention. She squeezed her sister's shoulder. The question is, what do you want to do next? Elaine watched Westfield's cruiser disappear around the corner, her mind already forming a plan. She wasn't just going to defend her property. She was going to make sure Detective Westfield and his entitled wife learned a permanent lesson about power and its limits. I want justice, she said simply, and I know exactly how to get it. The community meeting room at the Meadowbrook Estates clubhouse was packed to capacity that Thursday evening. Residents from both Meadowbrook and the neighboring Oakmont subdivision filled every chair, with latecomers lining the walls. At the front of the room, Elaine sat beside Rebecca and Martin Chen, her weathered ally from next door. Rebecca had leveraged her position to organize this town hall under the innocuous title of Community Pool Access and Neighborhood Safety, but everyone in attendance knew the real agenda. News of the Westfield incident had spread through both communities like wildfire, with neighbors taking sides before they even had all the facts. Chief Martinez sat at the front table alongside Captain Rodriguez from Internal Affairs and 3 members of the City Council. The chief looked uncomfortable, his collar seemingly too tight as he shuffled papers in front of him. "I'd like to call this meeting to order," announced the facilitator, a neutral mediator from the city manager's office. "We're here to discuss recent concerns about community resources and to ensure all residents understand the policies regarding private property and the role of our police department." From her seat, Elaine could see Diane and James Westfield seated in the third row, their expressions carefully neutral. James wore his civilian clothes rather than his uniform. Tactical choice, Elaine suspected, to appear as just another concerned citizen. Before we begin with public comments, the facilitator continued, Councilwoman Mercer would like to provide some context. Rebecca approached the microphone, her professional demeanor masking the fierce protectiveness Elaine knew was simmering beneath. "Thank you all for coming tonight. What began as an unfortunate misunderstanding has revealed some systemic issues we need to address as a community." She outlined the incident objectively, careful not to editorialize or name names, though everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. Since this incident, Rebecca continued, my office has received 17 additional reports from residents who experienced similar intimidation from individuals who use their position or connections to law enforcement to gain special privileges. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elaine watched as Detective Westfield shifted uncomfortably in his seat, whispering something to Diane, whose pinched expression had grown increasingly sour. "This isn't about one family or one police officer," Rebecca emphasized. "This is about ensuring that our community standards and legal protections apply equally to everyone, regardless of their position." When it came time for public comments, Martin Chen was the first to approach the microphone. The retired journalist adjusted his glasses and spoke with the measured cadence of someone accustomed to public speaking. "I've lived in Meadowbrook for 23 years, he began. "In that time, I witnessed the gradual erosion of boundaries between legitimate police authority and personal privilege. What happened to my neighbor wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of unchecked entitlement. As more residents came forward with their stories, a pattern emerged. Small abuses of power, intimidation wrapped in friendly suggestions, special treatment disguised as community relations. The Westfields weren't the disease. They were merely the most visible symptom." When it was finally Elaine's turn to speak, she felt surprisingly calm. 3 days of preparation with Rebecca had distilled her message to its essence. "I don't want Detective Westfield to lose his job," she said, drawing surprised looks from many, including the Westfields themselves. "What I want is accountability and change. I'm proposing a community oversight committee with representatives from both neighborhoods, working directly with police leadership to establish clear guidelines about the use of authority and influence." She laid out her proposal methodically, drawing on her years of administrative experience. "This isn't about punishment, it's about restoration and prevention. If we truly believe in community policing, then the community needs a voice in how that policing is conducted." As she returned to her seat, Chief Martinez leaned toward Captain Rodriguez, their conversation inaudible but intense. The meeting continued for another hour, with the city council members proposing formal actions and timelines. Throughout it all, Detective Westfield's expression grew increasingly stoic, while Diane's facade of composure began to crack. When the facilitator announced that the police department would be implementing a mandatory ethics refresher course for all officers, focusing specifically on conflicts of interest, Diane abruptly stood and left the room, Detective Westfield following a moment later. As the meeting concluded, residents clustered around Elaine, offering support and sharing contact information for the newly proposed Oversight Committee. Through the clubhouse windows, she could see the Westfields in the parking lot, engaged in what appeared to be a heated exchange. "You did well," Rebecca said, squeezing her sister's hand. "This could have been just about your pool, but you made it about something bigger." Elaine nodded, watching as the Westfields drove away, their car disappearing into the summer evening. "It was never just about my pool," she replied. It was about boundaries and what happens when people with power forget where they end. Retriclad can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.